like it's about identity, but it started in fraud, right? And fraud management teams and fraud risk teams were all about like, how do you reduce that impact to the business? And it was very disconnected originally from the customer experience, the onboarding, the loyalty programs. And now everybody's having to look at that full customer journey, and we're seeing those different departments and buying committees have to come together and think of identity as a very strategic piece of just their business strategy. And so one of the things, why we were acquired by MasterCard is this concept of, we do believe identity is the primary accelerator of building trust in a digital economy.
I do. It's just so interesting hearing you talk about that, because I fundamentally remember when I started in regulatory technologies in this world 10 years ago, these roles and positions around identity and compliance or risk, or however you categorize it, were always tended to be back office roles. It's actually come front and center as a leadership and an executive role to ensure that customer journey, the identity of its end users, can be planned out as part of the whole strategic vision of the organization, and it's helped fuel the growth as opposed to be considered some kind of back office checkbox. And it's such a fascinating shift.
Failing to convert good customers is not a one-time hit to your business. It's a multi-time hit. A lot of times there's customers are never coming back if you turn them away once. UX is a major concern for enterprises. As I was preparing for this, reading a recent report, I think last year alone, e-commerce marketplaces lost something like $18 billion in the US in estimated revenue due to abandoned transactions because of lengthy account creation processes. That's a tremendous loss to businesses, right? So what is causing that are these complicated stacks, right? I think we've probably all been on a website where we've put in our information, clicked 3 times, and then it asks us for exactly the same information for a slightly different use, and it makes no sense.
Regular consumers who are now more used to digital experiences, they're becoming less patient as time goes on. They expect a better customer experience. They don't want delays, more likely to drop off where there's friction and delays. StoneX operates in multiple jurisdictions, and we see the rules vary by jurisdictions. We see them change over time as well to catch up with changes. You need to, for the different rules, you need different products to put together to get that balancing act. You need products that combat fraud. You need products to measure risk. You need products to identify people. So you could potentially have multiple vendors all just to onboard each customer.
But what has happened over the last decade is companies have turned to various point solutions to solve different identity challenges. And that was necessary. You may have started with, data source checks, or you might have started with document verification. And then you realize, okay, we've got this problem. We need to add this. And you end up with what I hear from our customers is 20, 30, 40 different vendors and solutions that they've had to stitch together into some configuration. Wow. And in some places that's working better than others, and it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And then when you try and optimize it, get another 2 percentage point increase in a certain country, 3% in another. You're almost playing a game of whack-a-mole. You whack down one thing and you change that, and it has a ripple effect, and you have another problem pop up somewhere else. And that's that sub-optimization problem I talked about. And we hear that from our customers all the time. They're looking to bring more efficiency, get more customers onboarded, but they've got 20, 30, 40 different solutions, and they're they're not only having to work with each of those vendors to optimize, then the burden is on them to try and optimize the whole. And it's a real challenge, like I said, at global scale.
I mean, yeah, when you're operating at a global scale, and for instance, if you've got a system that may have been implemented a certain number of years ago, and for instance, an employee is working on that one, and maybe they're not even working at the same organization anymore, that just creates, as you can see there, that spaghetti-like system, which for small, medium enterprises, all the way up to large corporates, no one wants to be handling that.
On the paradoxical piece here also comes in the fact that, oftentimes the collection and storage of data through multiple third parties also creates key vulnerabilities for the consumer in protecting their data, right? I think we're seeing a lot of fines recently through a regulation, I'll just use the acronym called BIPA in Illinois. We're seeing companies like Meta, vendors as well, with hefty fines because they were not necessarily either securely storing or getting consent or knowingly understanding where they were holding biometric data for consumers. So you have this kind of paradox where the data is less secure and it's siloed and not communicating within the organization, which is not optimal.
Got all these various data sources, all this information you're trying to pull into an end-to-end view. How did you go about building your process?
Yeah, it's a great question. It was tough, and we are still on the journey, for sure. We took a step back and really analyzed the business process, right? Leaving technology aside for a moment, really just taking a look at the KYB onboarding process start to end. Again, layered on with those really two principal objectives. Truly what KYB is all about is knowing that customer, knowing that business. We want to know the client. That's ultimately the point of the KYB process, so that the risks presented by the client are well understood and we're not taking on a client that exceeds our risk appetite, right? That's the fundamental point of KYB. So that was a principal objective going into our process build. And second, we wanted to make the KYB process as simple and friction-free as possible. I mean, it is still compliance. We're never going to get rid of complexity and friction in this process, but we are really striving to make it as simple and friction-free as possible. So those were sort of our guiding principles going into a process redesign. And again, we're certainly not at end of job, but as we've been on this journey for the last year or so, we've built an improved KYB process, which is enabled by technology.
Now, for our viewers, I think what you're going to be taking away from today's session is really the scope of the unsolved digital identity problem, how to balance fraud, compliance, and that user experience, and ultimately a new way to verify identities and use that within a single platform.